my fiancée messaged, grabbing coffee with Ryan, take the bus home. I was unconscious in there after a workplace accident. She was still laughing with her cherished study buddy. Until a paramedic showed up at her cafe to share my crisis update. I should have known something was fundamentally wrong with Monica when she started calling me Tommy from the plant to her MBA classmates. Like my job operating cranes at Milwaukee Steel Fabrication was something embarrassing she had to explain away. I'd been working there for 6 years, earning solid money and building a reputation as one of the most reliable operators on the crew. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid our bills and was funding half of Monica's graduate program. That Tuesday started like any other day. I was moving a load of structural beams to the North Bay when Jake, our site supervisor, called up to me about repositioning the crane for a concrete pour. I'd done this maneuver hundreds of times, but construction sites are unpredictable. The scaffolding system supporting the walkway below had been installed wrong. I found out later the contractor had cut corners on the foundation anchors to save money. As I was climbing down from the crane cab to check the load positioning, the entire scaffolding structure gave way beneath my feet. I remember the sound of metal snapping, the sensation of falling, then nothing. I woke up in the trauma bay at Milwaukee General with the worst headache of my life and a burning sensation in my chest every time I tried to breathe. Dr. Kim, the attending physician, was checking my pupil responses with a small flashlight. "Mr. Mitchell, you're in the emergency room. You've suffered a concussion and 3 broken ribs from a workplace accident. We need to keep you under observation for the next few hours to monitor for any brain swelling." I tried to sit up, but the room spun violently. How long was I out? About 40 minutes at the scene, then another 20 during transport. "We've been trying to reach your emergency contact, but there's been no response to our calls." That's when I remembered my phone was probably still in my work locker. I asked the nurse to check my jacket pocket, and there it was, cracked screen but still functional. I had 3 missed calls from the hospital, 2 from Jake, and 1 text message from Monica sent 20 minutes after my accident, grabbing coffee with Ryan to review our market analysis project. "Take the bus home from work today. Might be late tonight." I stared at that message, trying to process what I was reading. Monica knew I always called or texted when my shift ended. We had dinner plans that night. She was supposed to pick me up because I'd mentioned the crane needed maintenance and might run late. Instead, she was at some cafe with Ryan, her study buddy, from the MBA program, completely unaware that I was lying in a hospital bed fighting to stay conscious. Dr. Kim noticed my expression change. "Is everything all right? We really need to notify your emergency contact about your condition and treatment plan." "She's having coffee," I said, holding up the phone. "My fiancée is having coffee with her study partner while I'm here with brain trauma." The nurse, whose name tag read Rodriguez, looked at the text message over my shoulder. Rodriguez wasn't just a nurse. I realized later he was actually the paramedic who'd responded to my accident scene. "Sir, this is a serious medical emergency. Your emergency contact needs to be informed immediately about your condition, regardless of what they're currently doing. Would you like me to make the official medical notification?" I thought about Monica sitting in that trendy downtown cafe, probably the Brew and Bean where all the business school students like to network, surrounded by laptops and textbooks, laughing at Ryan's jokes while I fought to keep my eyes open. "Yes," I said. "Please make the official notification. She's at Brew and Bean Cafe downtown, according to her Instagram stories from an hour ago." Rodriguez nodded seriously. "I'll handle the medical emergency notification personally. She needs to understand the gravity of the situation." As he left to make the call, Dr. Kim continued explaining my treatment plan. But I kept staring at that text message, realizing that when faced with the choice between supporting her injured fiancé and advancing her networking opportunities, Monica had chosen her MBA program. The woman I'd planned to marry in 8 months had received news of my workplace accident and decided it wasn't important enough to interrupt her coffee date. I later found out exactly what happened when Rodriguez arrived at Brew and Bean in his full paramedic uniform. The trendy cafe was packed with its usual afternoon crowd of business students, freelancers, and young professionals working on laptops and conducting networking meetings over expensive lattes. Monica and Ryan had claimed the prime corner table near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Their MBA textbooks and printed market analysis reports spread across the surface like they were conducting some crucial business merger instead of working on a graduate school assignment. Rodriguez told me later that the entire cafe went silent when he walked through the door in his Milwaukee Fire Department uniform, his radio crackling with dispatch calls. People looked up from their MacBooks and conversations, probably assuming someone was having a medical emergency right there in the coffee shop. He approached Monica and Ryan's table directly, his expression serious and professional. "Excuse me, are you Monica-chan?" Monica looked up from her textbook, probably annoyed at being interrupted during her important study session. "Yes, that's me. Is something wrong?" "Ma'am, I'm Paramedic Rodriguez with Milwaukee Fire Department. I need to provide you with official medical emergency notification regarding Thomas Mitchell. He's been involved in a serious workplace accident and is currently receiving treatment at Milwaukee General Hospital Trauma Unit." I can only imagine the look on Monica's face as the weight of Rodriguez's words sank in while the entire cafe listened to every word. Ryan later told me that Monica went completely pale, her hand flying to her mouth as she processed what she was hearing. The business students at neighboring tables had stopped pretending to study and were openly staring at the unfolding drama. "What kind of accident? Is he okay?" Monica's voice was barely above a whisper, but in the dead silence of the cafe, everyone could hear her panic. "Mr. Mitchell suffered a scaffolding collapse at Milwaukee Steel Fabrication. He has sustained a significant concussion, 3 broken ribs, and was unconscious for over an hour. He's currently stable but requires observation for potential brain trauma complications. The attending physician needs to speak with his emergency contact immediately about his treatment plan and medical decisions." Rodriguez paused, letting the severity sink in before delivering the next part. "Ma'am, Mr. Mitchell regained consciousness about 30 minutes ago and informed medical staff that his emergency contact was having coffee rather than responding to hospital notification calls." The silence in that cafe must have been deafening. Monica was now the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Her networking session transformed into public humiliation as dozens of witnesses absorbed the fact that she'd ignored emergency calls about her injured fiancé to continue her study date. Ryan, to his credit, immediately started gathering their papers and closing textbooks. "Monica, we need to get you to the hospital right now." "I'll drive you." But Monica was still processing the social catastrophe unfolding around her. I imagine her calculating how this would look to her MBA classmates, how the story would spread through their program, how she'd be known as the woman who prioritized studying over her fiancé's medical emergency. "I didn't know it was serious," she said, her voice rising defensively. "He just said there was an accident. I thought maybe he cut his finger or something minor." Rodriguez remained professional, but his tone carried a slight edge. "Ma'am, any workplace accident requiring emergency medical response should be considered serious until proven otherwise. Mr. Mitchell was transported by ambulance to the trauma unit. The hospital has been attempting to reach you for over an hour." The judgment in that cafe was palpable. I wasn't there, but I could picture the expressions on those business students' faces, the whispered conversations that would start the moment Monica left, the way this story would become cautionary tale gossip throughout the MBA program. Monica grabbed her purse and laptop bag, her hands shaking as Ryan helped her pack up their study materials. "I'm going to the hospital now. This is all just a misunderstanding." But Rodriguez wasn't finished with the official notification. "Ma'am, for medical record purposes, I need to document that emergency contact notification was successfully delivered at 3:47 p.m. at Brew and Bean Cafe, approximately 90 minutes after the initial accident occurred." That timestamp would become crucial later, because it established exactly how long Monica had prioritized her coffee date over my medical emergency. As they prepared to leave, I heard later that Monica turned to the cafe full of staring faces and said loudly, "This isn't what it looks like. I didn't know he was seriously hurt." But the damage was done. Her entire MBA social circle had witnessed her priorities in real time, and no amount of explanation could undo the fact that she'd received news of my accident and chosen to continue her study session with Ryan instead of rushing to help me. Monica burst into my hospital room 45 minutes later, tears streaming down her face and her breath coming in short gasps like she'd run through the entire building. But I recognized this panic for what it really was, not concern for my well-being, but horror at the public humiliation she'd just endured in front of her precious MBA network. "Tommy, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was this serious. Are you okay? What did the doctors say?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away instinctively. The movement sent a sharp pain through my broken ribs, reminding me exactly why I was lying in this hospital bed while she'd been discussing market analysis over artisanal coffee. I'm alive, obviously. 3 broken ribs, concussion, possible brain trauma. They're keeping me for observation. I kept my voice flat and factual. "The doctors have been trying to reach you for hours." I know. My phone was on silent for our study session. "I had no idea you were hurt this badly." She was crying harder now, but something about her tears felt performative, like she was more upset about being caught than about my actual condition. "Monica, I sent you a text saying there was a workplace accident. What part of that didn't sound serious enough to warrant a phone call? You didn't say you were unconscious. You didn't say you were in the hospital. I thought maybe you'd cut yourself or something minor happened." Her defensive tone was already irritating me, but what she said next made me realize our relationship was fundamentally over. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Having a paramedic show up at Brew and Bean in front of everyone? Ryan's mortified. My entire study group was there. They're all going to think I'm some kind of terrible person." There was. Her primary concern wasn't my broken ribs or head injury, it was her reputation among her MBA classmates. I was fighting brain trauma, and she was worried about networking optics. "You are a terrible person," I said quietly. "I could have died today, and you're complaining about being embarrassed. That's not fair. I came as soon as I found out how serious it was. You came as soon as you were publicly humiliated into coming. There's a difference." Dr. Kim chose that moment to return with my test results, probably saving Monica from saying something even more revealing about her priorities. My brain scans were clear, no bleeding or swelling, but I needed to stay for 3 days of observation due to the severity of the concussion. 3 days that gave me plenty of time to think about Monica's reaction, her words, her choices. Monica visited every day, bringing flowers and apologies, but I could see her checking her phone constantly, monitoring the social media fallout from the cafe incident. She kept asking if I'd talked to anyone about what happened, clearly worried about damage control rather than my recovery. I told my sister Claire what happened, I mentioned on day 2. She asked why my emergency contact didn't respond to the hospital calls. Monica's face went tight. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you were having coffee with Ryan and decided it wasn't important enough to interrupt." "Tommy, please don't make this into something bigger than it is. People make mistakes. I'm here now, aren't I?" But I was beginning to understand that this wasn't a mistake, it was a revelation. Monica had shown me exactly where I ranked in her priorities when faced with a real crisis. My physical pain would heal, but the knowledge that my fiancé had weighed my emergency against her MBA networking and chosen the coffee date was something I couldn't unsee. On my final night in the hospital, Monica tried a different approach. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize I should have dropped everything immediately. But Tommy, you have to understand the pressure I'm under with this program. These connections matter for my future career." "Our future career," I corrected. "We're supposed to be building a life together." "Of course, our future. But you have job security at the plant. I'm trying to break into consulting, and every networking opportunity matters. Ryan might be able to connect me with internships at his father's firm." And there it was again. Even her apology centered on her ambitions, her career, her networking needs. She still didn't understand that when your partner is unconscious in a trauma unit, everything else becomes secondary. When Dr. Kim discharged me on Friday morning, I realized I wasn't just leaving the hospital with broken ribs and a concussion. I was leaving with the clear understanding that Monica and I wanted fundamentally different things from life, and that her love for me was conditional on convenience and social acceptability. I spent my first week of recovery at my sister Claire's house, sleeping on her couch and trying to figure out how to extract myself from a 3-year relationship and shared apartment lease. Claire had been furious when I told her the full story about Monica's coffee date priorities, and she made it clear I was welcome to stay as long as needed while I planned my exit strategy. The doctor had cleared me for light activity, so I decided to face the inevitable and return to our apartment to collect my belongings. I texted Monica that I'd be coming by Saturday afternoon to pack my things, giving her fair warning so she could be elsewhere if she wanted to avoid the confrontation. But when I unlocked the door, she was sitting at our kitchen table with red eyes and a cup of coffee, clearly prepared for a fight. "Tommy, please don't do this. We can work through what happened. Every couple has misunderstandings." She stood up as I walked past her toward the bedroom where I'd stored my suitcases. "This wasn't a misunderstanding, Monica. This was you showing me exactly who you are when things get difficult." I started pulling clothes from our shared dresser, trying to ignore the sharp pain in my ribs every time I bent over. The physical reminders of my accident made her betrayal feel even more immediate and real. I made a mistake. One mistake in 3 years together. Doesn't that count for anything? She followed me into the bedroom, her voice taking on that whining quality she used when she wasn't getting her way. "It wasn't one mistake. It was a choice that revealed your character. When I needed you most, you chose your MBA networking over our relationship." I folded my work clothes carefully, thinking about how many of these shirts had been stained with sweat and steel dust from honest work that apparently embarrassed her. "You're being completely unreasonable." I apologized. I explained that I didn't understand the severity of the situation. Monica moved closer, probably hoping physical proximity would somehow change my mind. "You chose not to understand. Any text message about a workplace accident should have sent you running, but you decided your study date with Ryan was more important." The mention of Ryan's name triggered something defensive in her expression. "This has nothing to do with Ryan. He's just a study partner. You're being paranoid and using this accident as an excuse to sabotage our relationship." I paused in my packing to look at her directly. "Monica, I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just finally seeing clearly." She tried tears next, the manipulation tactic that had worked on me countless times before. But lying in that hospital bed had given me perspective on genuine vulnerability versus performed emotion, and these tears felt as calculated as everything else about her response to my accident. "Fine. Leave then. But don't expect me to wait around while you throw away everything we built together over one mistake." Her tears dried up remarkably quickly, replaced by anger that felt more authentic than anything else she'd shown me. I was loading boxes into my truck when our neighbor Mrs. Patterson approached from her garden. She was an older woman who'd always been friendly, often commenting on how nice it was to see a young couple working hard and planning their future together. "Tommy, honey, I heard about your accident. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thanks Mrs. Patterson. Just moving some things out while I recover." I didn't want to get into the details, but she had that concerned expression that meant she already knew something was wrong. "I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but Monica's had that young man Ryan over quite a bit this week. They've been having what look like pretty intense conversations on the porch." She paused delicately. "I just thought you should know, given your situation." So Monica had been hosting Ryan for support sessions, while I was deciding whether to end our engagement. The irony was almost funny. She was already lining up my replacement while still trying to convince me that our relationship could be salvaged. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and finished loading my truck. Monica appeared in the doorway as I was securing the last box, her expression cycling between desperation and fury. "This is cruel, Tommy. You're punishing me for one moment of poor judgment. This is revenge." "No, Monica. Revenge would be posting about your coffee date choice on social media for all your MBA friends to see. This is just me choosing not to marry someone who abandons their partner during medical emergencies." I climbed into my truck, my ribs protesting the movement. "You orchestrated that whole paramedic thing to humiliate me publicly. You planned this entire dramatic scene to make me look bad." Even now, facing the end of our relationship, she was more concerned about her image than our actual problems. I rolled down the window for my final words to the woman I'd planned to marry. I didn't orchestrate anything, Monica. I just made sure my emergency contact received proper medical notification. Your humiliation was entirely self-inflicted by choosing coffee over my crisis. As I drove away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of our former shared life, probably already texting Ryan to come provide comfort while she processed being held accountable for her choices. I found a small one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from Milwaukee Steel, close enough that I could walk to work once my ribs healed completely. The place was nothing fancy, basic kitchen, decent living room, single bathroom, but it was mine, and every piece of furniture I bought was chosen because I actually wanted it, not because it looked impressive to MBA students at dinner parties. The guys at the plant had been incredibly supportive when I returned to light duty the following Monday. Jake, our site supervisor, pulled me aside during my first break to check on my recovery and share something interesting. Tommy, I got a weird call last week from your ex-fiancée asking about your minor injury and when you'd be back to work. When I told her you'd been hospitalized with serious injuries and were on medical leave, she seemed annoyed rather than concerned. Made some comment about you always being dramatic about health stuff. That phone call revealed everything I needed to know about Monica's true feelings regarding my accident. Even after seeing me in the hospital bed, even after learning about my broken ribs and concussion, she was still minimizing the severity to other people and suggesting I was exaggerating my injuries for attention. She also asked if there was any way the accident could affect your employment or safety record, Jake continued. Like she was worried about your job security more than your actual well-being. I found that pretty cold, to be honest. My coworkers had witnessed the scaffolding collapse firsthand. They'd seen me unconscious and bleeding, had helped load me into the ambulance, and had spent that afternoon worried about whether I'd suffered permanent brain damage. For Monica to characterize that as a minor injury, to people who'd actually been there was insulting to everyone involved. Thanks for letting me know, Jake. Monica and I are done, by the way. She showed her true colors during this whole thing. Good for you, man. You deserve someone who actually gives a damn when you're hurt. The blue-collar honesty of my workplace felt refreshing after 3 years of Monica's image-conscious social circle. These guys might not have MBA degrees, but they understood loyalty, partnership, and showing up for people who mattered. When someone got injured, everyone rallied around them. When someone needed help, you dropped what you were doing and helped. Basic human decency that apparently wasn't taught in graduate business programs. Monica kept texting me throughout the week, alternating between apology attempts and accusation strategies. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us and our future together. Can we please meet for coffee to discuss how to move forward? Followed by, your sister Claire is poisoning you against me. She never liked me anyway. Then, I realize now how scared I was seeing you hurt. Sometimes fear makes people react strangely. The manipulation was transparent, but I appreciated having written documentation of her mindset. Each text message reinforced my decision to leave someone who saw our relationship as a negotiation rather than a partnership. My ribs were healing well, and Dr. Kim had cleared me for normal activities as long as I avoided heavy lifting for another few weeks. I was sleeping better in my small apartment than I had in months sharing a bed with Monica, probably because I no longer felt like I was disappointing someone just by existing. The stress of constantly trying to measure up to her MBA social circle's expectations had been exhausting in ways I hadn't fully realized until it was gone. 2 weeks after moving out, Monica's texts became more desperate and manipulative. Tommy, I miss you so much. Our apartment feels empty without you. Then, I've been talking to Ryan about what happened, and he thinks you're being too harsh. The casual mention of discussing our private relationship problems with Ryan, the same guy she'd prioritized over my medical emergency, showed how completely she misunderstood appropriate boundaries. I know I made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. What we had was special. But what we'd had wasn't special to her when tested against MBA networking opportunities. She'd made that perfectly clear in the moment that mattered most. I maintained no contact, focusing on my recovery and appreciating the quiet simplicity of a life where my worth wasn't constantly being evaluated against other people's career achievements or social status. After 2 weeks of silence, Monica appeared at my apartment door on a Thursday evening, her eyes red and puffy, clutching a tissue and looking more fragile than I'd ever seen her. She'd clearly been crying for hours, and when I opened the door, she immediately launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about our future together. "Tommy, I need to tell you something important. I'm pregnant." She stepped closer, her voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. "I found out 3 days ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but with everything that's happened between us, I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me." I stared at her, processing this information while my mind automatically calculated timelines. If she was really pregnant, the timing would put conception around my accident date, which would explain why she'd been so desperate to reconcile despite my clear rejection of her attempts. "I know you're angry with me about the hospital situation, but Tommy, we're going to be parents. We need to think about our family's future now, not just our personal feelings." She reached for my hand, her touch soft and pleading. "I've been so scared about how you'd react, especially after how things ended between us. But this baby needs both of us, and I need you to come home so we can work through this together." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs behind Monica. My sister Claire appeared, carrying groceries and looking surprised to find Monica at my door. Claire had been checking on me regularly since my discharge, bringing food and making sure I wasn't pushing myself too hard during recovery. "Monica," Claire said coolly, setting down her grocery bags and crossing her arms. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hi, Claire," Monica said, wiping her eyes and straightening her shoulders like she was preparing for battle. "I was just telling Tommy about our situation. About the baby." Claire's eyebrows shot up, and I could see her mental calculator working just as mine had. She knew exactly when Monica and I had last been intimate, and she knew the timeline didn't quite add up with Monica's current claim. "The baby," Claire repeated slowly. "That's interesting timing, Monica. When exactly did you find out?" 3 days ago. I've been morning sick for over a week, and I finally took a test." Monica's hand moved protectively to her stomach, a gesture that seemed calculated to emphasize her supposed condition. "I know this complicates things, but Tommy, we need to think about what's best for our child." Claire stepped closer, her protective instincts clearly activated. "Monica, forgive me for being direct, but given how you handled Tommy's medical emergency, I find it convenient that you're suddenly pregnant right when he's successfully moving on with his life." "This isn't about convenience," Monica snapped, her fragile demeanor cracking slightly. "This is about family responsibility. Tommy, you can't just abandon your own child because you're upset about a misunderstanding." The way she phrased it, a misunderstanding rather than her abandonment of me during a medical crisis, showed that she still didn't understand the gravity of what she'd done. But more importantly, something about her pregnancy claim felt off. Her timeline was suspicious, her sudden appearance after weeks of failed reconciliation attempts was too convenient, and the way she was pushing for immediate action rather than careful discussion felt manipulative. "If you're pregnant, Monica, then we'll handle it responsibly," I said carefully. "But that doesn't automatically mean we're getting back together. We still have fundamental problems that a baby wouldn't solve." Her face fell as she realized I wasn't going to immediately cave to the pregnancy pressure. "Tommy, please. I know I messed up, but people make mistakes. I've learned from this experience, and I promise things will be different. I'll prioritize you and our family above everything else." But even as she made these promises, I noticed her phone buzzing constantly in her purse, and she kept glancing at it anxiously. Claire noticed too, her expression growing more skeptical by the minute. "Monica, if you're really pregnant and serious about working things out with Tommy, maybe you should focus entirely on this conversation instead of checking your phone every 30 seconds. Monica's cheeks flushed, and she quickly moved her purse behind her back. "It's just work stuff. Nothing important." But her defensive reaction suggested otherwise. Whatever was on that phone was important enough to distract her even during this supposedly critical conversation about our future family. That night, after Monica left with promises to call tomorrow to discuss our situation, Claire and I talked through the entire encounter. Something felt orchestrated about Monica's timing, her presentation, and her behavior. The pregnancy claim was possible but suspicious, and her continued phone checking during such an emotional conversation suggested her attention was divided even during her own manipulation attempt. The truth came from the most unexpected source 2 days later. Ryan called me directly, which was shocking since we'd never exchanged phone numbers or had any personal relationship beyond being aware of each other's existence through Monica. His voice was tense and uncomfortable when I answered, like he was making a call he really didn't want to make but felt morally obligated to complete. "Tommy, this is Ryan from Monica's MBA program. I know this is awkward, but I need to tell you something important about Monica's current situation." I sat down in my living room, preparing myself for whatever revelation was coming. Ryan had always seemed like a decent guy during the few times I'd met him at Monica's school events, but I'd assumed he was just another ambitious business student trying to network his way into consulting. "She's been staying at my place since your breakup," he continued, his voice gaining strength as he committed to full honesty. "At first, it was just as friends. She needed somewhere to stay and was pretty broken up about losing you. But over the past few weeks, things have developed into something more serious between us." That revelation wasn't entirely surprising, given Mrs. Patterson's observations and Monica's frequent mentions of Ryan throughout our relationship. What surprised me was Ryan's decision to call me directly rather than letting Monica continue her manipulation campaign. "I'm calling because Monica told me she's pregnant and trying to get you back by claiming the baby is yours. Tommy, I know for certain that she's not pregnant. We've been intimate, and she's definitely not showing any signs of pregnancy. No morning sickness, no missed periods, nothing." The relief that washed over me was immediate and overwhelming. I'd spent 2 sleepless nights calculating how to handle co-parenting with someone I no longer trusted, wondering if I'd be tied to Monica forever through a child, trying to figure out how to be a responsible father while maintaining boundaries with someone who'd abandoned me during a medical emergency. "She's been posting subtle hints on social media about pregnancy and abandonment, hoping to pressure you through mutual friends and social guilt," Ryan continued. "But I couldn't let her manipulate you with a fake pregnancy when I know the truth about her situation." I was impressed by Ryan's integrity. He could have stayed silent, let Monica continue her manipulation, and avoided the drama of getting involved in our messy breakup. Instead, he was risking his developing relationship with Monica to prevent her from destroying my life with false pregnancy claims. "Why are you telling me this, Ryan? You could have just stayed out of it." "Because what she's doing is wrong, and because I've gotten to know Monica well enough over the past month to understand why you left her. She's been telling me stories about your relationship that don't paint her in a very good light, even though she doesn't seem to realize it." Ryan paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "She talks about you like you were some kind of obstacle to her career ambitions rather than someone she loved. The way she describes that coffee date during your accident makes it sound like you were being unreasonable for expecting her to drop everything for a minor workplace incident. She really doesn't understand what she did wrong." That conversation with Ryan gave me the final pieces of Monica's character puzzle. Even when telling stories to her new romantic interest, she couldn't help but reveal her self-centered perspective and complete lack of understanding about partnership, loyalty, and priorities. She's also been complaining to our MBA study group about how you used your accident to manipulate her and how you orchestrated public humiliation at Brew and Bean. Most people in our program think she's completely delusional about the situation, but she doesn't seem to realize that her stories make her look worse, not better. I thanked Ryan for his honesty and his integrity in making a difficult phone call. After hanging up, I immediately shared the information with Claire, who was both relieved about the false pregnancy and disgusted by Monica's willingness to use fake pregnancy as manipulation. We decided to inform our mutual friends about Monica's deception before she could spread more lies or guilt trips through our social network. I crafted a simple, factual message explaining the timeline of events: my workplace accident, Monica's choice to prioritize coffee with Ryan over my medical emergency, her subsequent manipulation attempts including false pregnancy claims, and my decision to end our engagement based on her revealed character and priorities. The response from our friends was swift and largely supportive. Several people admitted they'd found Monica's behavior during my accident disturbing but hadn't wanted to get involved in our relationship drama. Others shared their own observations about Monica's social climbing tendencies and her frequent complaints about my blue-collar limitations during our relationship. But the most satisfying vindication came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim and Paramedic Rodriguez both reached out to check on my recovery, and when they learned about Monica's continued manipulation attempts, they both expressed professional disgust at her behavior. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Kim said during a follow-up call, "I've been practicing emergency medicine for 15 years, and I've never encountered someone who responded to their partner's serious medical emergency with such callous indifference. You made the right decision leaving someone who would abandon you during a health crisis." Rodriguez was even more direct. "Brother, I've delivered medical emergency notifications to hundreds of family members over the years. Most people panic immediately and drop everything to rush to the hospital. Your ex-fiance's reaction was so unusual that I'm still talking about it with other paramedics as an example of how not to respond when someone you supposedly love is fighting for their life." Their professional validation meant everything to me. These were people who dealt with medical emergencies and family crises every day, who understood the gravity of life-threatening situations, and they both confirmed that Monica's behavior was far outside the range of normal human responses to a partner's serious injury. As I settled into my new life, I realized that my workplace accident, while traumatic and painful, had actually saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Monica's true character had been revealed under pressure, and I'd learned that her love for me was conditional on social convenience, career advancement opportunities, and her own personal benefit. I was free to build a life with someone who would actually show up during the difficult moments, someone who understood that real partnership means supporting each other when it's hard, not just when it's easy.